This week's edition of Grow, we are at the Buffalo County Fair. We'll have an update on southern rust in our area, plus we'll see how animals have been dealing with the heat at fairs in central Nebraska, and why a certain type of ice cream is stirring up a Roundup controversy. It's time to grow. Thanks for tuning in this week. I'm Regina Bird in for Steve White. We'll catch up with folks here at the Buffalo County Fair shortly, but first we'll talk about a new threat that's been emerging for farmers. Southern rust can cause major problems for corn growers. It's caused by a fungus, and it's now been confirmed in 7 counties. This is the earliest it's been spotted in Nebraska. Extension educators say that's troubling because it sticks around throughout the growing season, so if farmers spray for it now, it could come back.
You know, our products, a lot of them have a 21 to 28 day residual on them, which means that if it flares up again later in the season, or gray leaf spot flares up later in the season, some guys may be looking at a second application, and we've seen that in the past. With today's prices, that just doesn't work out very well.
The wet spring resulted in some late planted corn, which can be more susceptible to southern rust. High humidity and high overnight temperatures can also spread this fungus. A popular weed killer is the subject of this week's poll question. We asked how you feel about the new soybeans that are resistant to the herbicide dicamba. There's a lot of interest in using dicamba to kill weeds that Roundup is no longer as effective for. We've had a ton of response, and it looks like most folks think it's a good option for weed control, but there remain concerns about drift, and some remain unsure as well. Speaking of herbicides, Ben & Jerry's is under fire. The Organic Consumers Association says 10 out of 11 samples from the ice cream company had traces of glyphosate. That's a key ingredient in the herbicide Roundup. A study by the Health Research Institute says that the highest amount of the weed killer was 1.74 parts per billion in the chocolate fudge brownie flavor. That's well within the EPA's allowable amount. But the OCA is calling for organic and natural food stores to dump Ben & Jerry's products unless the company goes organic. A spokesman for Ben & Jerry's responded saying, quote, "Given there's a report out there, we definitely want to understand it. But we know when organizations hope to raise an issue, oftentimes bringing in Ben & Jerry's can help draw attention." End quote. The legislature failed to find common ground on tax relief. Now rural senators promote another path. The Nebraska Cattlemen's Association is in favor of broadening the sales tax if it means lowering the burden on property taxes. After the legislature failed to reach a compromise this year, some lawmakers suggested putting a tax package on the ballot. Groups like the cattlemen think there's a good chance that could happen.
I think it's likely. I've been in a lot of conversations since the legislature adjourned. I think people have kind of reached the boiling point of frustration. I also think there's a lot of thought out there that if a ballot initiative is put together and the voters have time to start thinking about that the legislature might be compelled to get something done before we get to the 2018 election.
Cattlemen say they're willing to give a little, and that means paying higher sales tax as a trade-off for property tax relief.
You know, speaking for Nebraska cattlemen specifically, we have really robust tax policy and have supported for a long time a discussion around sales tax, whether it's broadening the base or even increasing the rate. I know none of us want to pay more taxes. We all are taxed really highly in many ways in Nebraska, so certainly I think it's a difficult conversation on who it impacts, but at the same time, just some small changes on that side could probably make big impacts on property taxes.
The Nebraska cattlemen have been on the road. It's their 4th annual road tour. They've been covering issues like trade and helping producers understand what it takes to get beef to China.
It is a great time to be in the beef industry right now. There is a lot going on. It is exciting that our Nebraska beef is going to China, and we're talking about that today and this week on the road trip, letting our producers know what they got to do to make sure they meet all the requirements so they can get their beef into China.
They invite cattle producers to get involved in the organization as a way to stay on top of issues at the state and national level. A woman in Crete is saving horses nobody else could. Lynn Guyton runs the Epona Horse Rescue. She says she's helped save more than 500 horses from all across the U.S., many of which are sick, injured, or otherwise neglected when she gets them. She buys them and cares for them until they're adopted. Epona Horse Rescue has more than 30 acres for the animals to roam. Guyton says she is in serious need of volunteers who have experience with horses, as well as donations. The Phelps County Fair was in full swing this time last week, but organizers say the heat presented some dangers for animals. Paige Dexter from the Nebraska Extension Office says they make sure to remind 4-H exhibitors that taking care of their animals is a priority.
We tell all of our exhibitors to always have water in every pen, and we try to keep our animals in the shade as much as possible. It is hard on these animals being the weight they are, so we try to make sure that we educate everyone that water is important and just push it in the pens as well.
Dexter tells us they try to keep the air moving throughout the barns. She also says a lot of the exhibitors brought their own fans to keep their animals cool. It's county fair season. What's your favorite part of the county fair? That's the subject of this week's poll question. Is it the 4-H exhibits or are the concerts your favorite? Maybe it's rodeo or motorsports. Follow Grow on Twitter to cast your vote. Still ahead on NTV's Grow, Kent has your farm forecast. Plus, we'll delve deeper into the problem that is southern rust. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Brianna Royal.
Hi, my name is Brittany Royal.
And you're watching NTV Grow.